All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. This is the Owen J. Roberts Board of School Directors regular business meeting being held on September 20th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and presentation of colors by the Navy Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, followed by a moment of silence. Please present colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join us in a moment of silence as we reflect on those serving in the United States Armed Forces, both past and present, the elected leaders for the state of Pennsylvania, and elected leaders of our nation. We have much to be thankful for in our community. Color guard, please post colors.
Right turn, march. Forward, march. Forward, hold. Post. Colors. Ready, face. Forward, march.
Please be seated. All right, item 3 is the executive session announcement. The Board of School Directors met on the following dates in executive session to discuss items in one or more of the following areas: personnel or legal matters, August 24th, 2021 and September 13th, 2021. A board workshop was held on August 24th, 2021. Item 4, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Stout.
Thank you, Mrs. Prophet. I'm excited to say that it's great to be in person, and I think for the first time in a long time, we have our Student Government Executive Council president here in person. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Zhang for her report.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Zhang, and I'm the Executive Student Council President this year at the high school. I have been a student in the district since kindergarten, so I'm very honored to be here today. At East Coventry, students are setting into a new school year and getting to know their teachers. All families had the recent opportunity to attend their child's back-to-school night. Teachers shared information about the classroom routines, the curricular expectations, and how families can best support their children. At East Vincent, they welcomed over 500 students back to in-person learning with an outside assembly with special guest, Wowzer the Wildcat. Throughout the opening of the 2021 to 2022 school year, the staff and students have been working on opening routines, establishing positive relationships, and implementing our curriculum program. The staff at East Vincent would like to thank the PTA for their generosity throughout the opening of the school year. As part of French Creek's Safe and Caring Environment goal, students and staff will be participating in the Start with Hello initiative from September 20th to the 24th. Students will participate in lessons and activities that promote inclusion, a sense of community, bullying prevention, and random acts of kindness. Each day of the week will focus on a different theme and inclusive activity. At French Creek, the second grade students are learning about leaders within our community. Students are looking forward to Dr. Stout's visit on Wednesday, September 29th, to learn about his leadership role within our OJR community. At North Coventry, on the evening of September 14th, students and their families enjoyed a PTO ice cream social on our fantastic playground. Students had an opportunity to play and socialize with their new classmates and catch up with their old friends. Congratulations to the following students who were North Coventry's first Citizenship Award winners of the year: Mason Moyer, Margot Narr, Daphne Buto, Evan Brown, Jace Frack, Charlotte Miller, Estelle Boone, Alex Ryan, Chloe Moscow, Tyler Neff, Avery Bauer, Shelby Schaefer, Amari Francis, and Anna Hendricks. At West Vincent on Monday, August 30th, West Vincent hosted an open house to welcome students and parents back to school. It provided a great opportunity for students to meet their teachers and become familiar with their classrooms. Everyone was greeted at the door by Mrs. Amadei, special area teachers, and staff who guided them to their classrooms. It was a great turnout and a successful event. On Friday, September 10th, West Vincent's PTA hosted its annual back-to-school bash. Families were able to purchase spiritware, eat delicious items from local food trucks, enter a raffle contest, and dance on the dance floor. The students' favorite was the dunk tank, where they tried dunking their principal, Mrs. Amadei, and some of their favorite teachers included Miss McKinn, Mrs. Stepler, Mrs. Roberts, Mrs. Snow, and Mrs. Hyman. It was a great night for the West Vincent community. The O.N.G. Roberts Middle School is off to a great start of the school year. Students are adjusting nicely to the building and the increased number of students in the building. Individual teams have been engaging in community building activities as well as SEL lessons during their daily win periods. Students attended their first meeting with their advisory groups last week, and many students have signed up to be a part of the principal's advisory group. These students will meet monthly with building administration to provide feedback on their middle school experience and suggestions for what they would like to see change. Students will begin selecting their club interests for the year coming this week. Fall sports are off to a smooth start, and many students are signing up for other after-school activities as well. At the high school, the Wildcat Ambassadors hosted freshman and new student tours on August 24th. And they have also been assisting students in finding their way to classes on the first days in the building. The OGR community is invited to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the O.N.G. Roberts Band Cavalcade on Saturday, October 2nd, starting at 4:30 p.m. in the Wildcat Stadium. The night will feature performances from 15 area high school bands, along with our very own high school and middle school marching bands. In addition, we are forming an OGR alumni band for a special performance and grand finale that evening. All OGR band alumni are invited to participate. Please contact Mr. Mangle at the high school for more information. And I can tell you it's going to be a great night. I'm part of the band, and we prepared a lot for this, so it'd be cool to see you guys there. The O.N.G. Roberts Wildcat Crew Club's boathouse was flooded from the rain of Ida, but with extreme effort of the parent leadership, it was cleaned, equipment was repaired, and tryouts were held. With race course lockdowns lifted, our student athletes were on their way to competing in 5 regattas this fall from Sunday, September 26th through Sunday, November 14th. Special thanks to Mrs. Amy Holland and Dr. Randy Cuthbert for their support during a challenging start to the year. Also at the high school tech pack, along with the student tech team, are going to present at an international teaching conference on how their teachers use clarity, consistency, and compassion during the last 2 school years. It's the first ever student-run presentation at the Canvas LMS conference. And finally, the O.N.G. Roberts Cyber Academy is up and running. Elementary students are receiving synchronous learning with OGR teachers. Students and parents are receiving opportunities from their home school to participate in activities like the PTO and PTAs. Middle school and high school students are receiving asynchronous learning through the platform Edgenuity. And Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Valina would like to thank all the administrators for their support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Mr. Oswald, I see you're in attendance tonight. Are you going to handle the recognition for your students?
Good evening, Dr. Stout. Good evening, school board. This evening I have the privilege of recognizing 4 students from East Coventry Elementary School. These 4 students participated in a chorus program this summer called the All-Star Honors Orchestra Ensemble under the tutelage of our orchestra director, Ms. Sybil Vernon. So I believe we have some, if not all of these students online. So I'd like to congratulate Nola Buckley, Jadon Kane, Ryan Locklear, and Sydney Wagner. Again, these 4 students represented East Coventry and the school district this past summer at the orchestra ensemble. So thank you so much.
And Dr. Oswald, I would like to apologize because I called you Mr. Oswald, and congratulations again on fulfilling that requirement over the summer. Not requirement, yeah, I guess it was a requirement at the time, but congratulations, quite an honor. Okay, we'll move into my superintendent report. This is my first superintendent report since the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year. I would like to thank all O&J Roberts staff, students, and families for a great start to this new school year. I have visited each of our schools numerous times since the first day of school and have been very impressed with the positive atmosphere in our buildings. I'm seeing a great appreciation and enthusiasm from students and staff alike for the opportunity to be in school in person. This month, we are recognizing one retiree, Brian Plumley. Brian has loyally served the district for over 31 years, working with food service, maintenance in the high school, and recently in our district warehouse. Brian is well known by his peers and others around him to be a tireless worker, problem solver, and well organized. Brian will be joining his wife, Ruth, who recently retired from O&J Roberts. I know Sarah mentioned a little bit about our cyber academy, but I'll share some numbers with you and also district enrollment. The district enrollment for the start of the school year is 5,460 students, including our cyber students. The number of students enrolled in the O&J Roberts Cyber Academy is 237. We have 164 at the elementary level, 27 middle school students in the Cyber Academy, and then 46 high school students in our Cyber Academy. The Education Foundation Family Farm Fest will be held on Saturday, September 25th, starting at 5 p.m. Tickets include a hayride, maze, games, and bonfires, and all proceeds benefit the students within the O&J Roberts School District. On Monday, September 13th, the board held a working session where they moved the 2021-2022 district goals to the September 20th school board agenda for full board approval. The goals can be found on tonight's agenda and on the district website. I'd like to provide some additional context regarding the process that the district administration and board members engaged in to develop these goals. A board workshop was held on August 24th with Mutiyu Fagbaya from the Performance Act Incorporated. During this session, Mutiyu worked with us on identifying and developing goals and action steps aligned to those current O&J Roberts School District Comprehensive Plan. The four identified goal areas are student learning and growth, safe and caring environment, fiscal responsibility, effective and efficient operations. I said four, there are five, and then communications and community relations. These are the same goals, overarching goal categories that we had in the previous year. Throughout the fall and winter, O&J Roberts School District will be engaging in the process of developing a new comprehensive plan that will go into effect at the start of the 2022 through 2023 school year. This new comprehensive plan will help chart the direction of the school district for the next 3 to 6 years. The state requires that we update the comprehensive plan every 3 years. My vision is to develop a 6-year plan that we will review and tweak at the 3-year mark. The district will be forming a comprehensive plan steering team comprised of students, staff, parents, and community members to help in the development of our new plan. Lastly, I would just like to thank the board members for collaborating with our district administration to develop these annual goals. Madam President, that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stout. We're going to move on to item 5, which is public comment. Information, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegations pertaining to items on the agenda. Speakers are to indicate your name, township of residence, and the items on the agenda to which your comments are addressed. Speakers will be limited to not more than 3 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in future deliberations. And then just as a reminder, our email address is there as well if you'd like to receive a written response. And then just a guideline for anyone that's on Zoom, if you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function. And then when it is your turn to speak, please state your name and township of residence.
Good evening. Is this on? Nick Rotoli, West Vincent. I wanted to comment on the district goals. I was at the July board meeting that commended the board on the adoption of the equity policy. This policy demonstrated to me that you were ready to recognize the increasing diversity in all forms within our community, recognizing that our community reflects the story of America, forever diversifying. I felt that the essence of the policy was to create a welcoming and safe environment for all, giving all students what they need to be successful and supporting your staff with the professional development they need to support this effort, thereby preparing our students for the world we are living in now and the one that they will live in as graduates. And I commended your sensible, reasonable approach to this issue. No substantive changes were made to the curricular program nor staff additions. But apparently since July, equity has become a dirty word in the district. When I look at the district goals for this year, it's clear that the wording for safe and caring environment goal is watered down to the point where it may satisfy some state checklist. But what this says to the community is that making all your students and staff feel welcome and giving them the tools that they need to understand equity within diversity is not really a priority. In your most recent comprehensive plan, Goal 1 stated, establish a district system that fully ensures each member of the district community promotes, enhances, and sustains a shared vision of positive school climate and ensures family and community support of student participation in the learning process. In the face of the ever-growing diversity in our community and society in general, have you decided that it's okay to have a generic policy that's destined to become a shelf document and not a priority any longer? Or will you put your words into meaningful action? That's what I'm looking forward to, and thank you for listening.
Mr. Bertoli, could I ask you to please sign in over there? Thank you so much.
Please go ahead.
I'm John Barnett. This is my school district. I'm a member of Beth Israel Synagogue, which is right down Fellowship. Also a founding member of the Interfaith Action Community in Chester County. Equity is a very important topic to the Interfaith Action Community and to my synagogue. And I talked to my rabbi tonight about coming to here to make some statements about the goals that you are going to adopt as a board tonight. I feel also that the equity policy isn't very well reflected at all in the goals that you've established. And I urge the board to relook at the goals to make sure there's a direct line to your intentions with the equity policy so that you know when you've achieved your goal. As you know, in the State Department of Education, it's required to publish the state consolidated plan every 3 years. And this is a good thing for the state to do. The department has goals for the state, just like OJR. O.J. Roberts has the goal of moving from good to great, and I applaud that goal. In the latest PA Consolidated State Plan, the state of Pennsylvania acknowledges for all of us that the Commonwealth, quote, has some of the most significant reading achievement gaps between low-income students and students of color versus their white and more affluent peers in the state than compared to other states. Similar gaps are evident with respect to high school graduation rate. As you know, across the Commonwealth, 9 in 10 white students graduate typically in 4 years, compared to only 7 in 10 African American and Latino students. The state has a plan, and it has very specific goals to try to chip away at those problems that none of us are proud of in Pennsylvania. So I'm proud that my school district, O.J. Roberts, has declared that we will prioritize the allocation of resources and opportunities so that we address the barriers that cause achievement gaps, like the ones that the state has acknowledged. It's clear in the new district education equity plan that your intention is to do that. I'm especially interested in the role of the superintendent or your designee to develop clear, accountable goals and metrics to address inequities. I urge the goal to relook at those. I urge the board to please relook at the goals to make sure we do have accountability goals and metrics, and choose the highest priority inequities that you want to attack, go after them, measure them. If we don't measure, we'll never know that we've gotten there. So thank you so much for listening.
Can you just state your township of residence, please?
West Vincent.
We have one online comment. Alicia, please give your full name, agenda item, and township of residence.
Hello?
Alicia, you are unmuted.
Okay. My name is Alicia Little, and I reside in Owen J. Roberts School District, French Creek Elementary School. So I'm speaking on equity and justice, and where to begin? What to say that hasn't already been said? We are here because we, the parents, demand choice over the mandate. Wolf is not backed by any laws, and his edict is a strong recommendation. It's like someone saying to you to order the salad and not the greasy cheeseburger. What are you gonna do? You're gonna order what you want, right? It's time now to not be pushed down by government.
Excuse me, ma'am, could you identify the agenda item that you're addressing?
On the one on equity and justice. I'm talking about justice for my kids here.
I'm sorry, ma'am, that does not appear on the agenda. You do have the right to comment at the end of the meeting on any topic, and I'd ask that you reserve your comments for that time.
All right, thank you.
My name is Heather McCrary, East Coventry Township. I wanted to adjust item number 13.3, and I just want to request this board to actually do a little bit better in what you're doing. We had a whole year of topics that have come in front of the board, and hardly any of them are in the goals that you set. So the one thing that is always a pet peeve of mine and many other people is the fact that you don't take any public input. There's been comments from all sides in this room and on Zoom about sexual harassment of students, about an equity policy that I said didn't even have a definition, about mask, no mask, quarantine, and it's like the goals that are here ignored everything from all sides that were brought to you. And some of the goals actually, a lot of them aren't even measurable. So goals should be measurable and based on data. I'm wondering if you guys will make public any of the starting data that you're going to use. For example, the Cyber Academy, how many kids are in Cyber Academy by grade? There's some goals in here that you put that some of us who've paid attention for years, all students should progress 1 year. To some of us, that's like a, I don't want to say a job duty, but also an expectation. It's not a goal. Goals are things that should move our district ahead. Our district is down in the rankings. Other schools, their equity goals, like Tredifferent, they're like tearing them apart. They're like, what can we do better here? And we don't even have the data. There was no data when you guys put your equity policy in. That caused a lot of ruckus and divide in this community. We had people at this podium calling each other racist, unacceptable. I am disappointed in the goals that are in here. I'm only one person. I imagine I speak for a lot of people, but after being shut down for a year and having to deal with a lot of new items and whatnot and ways of learning, that I think you guys could have done a little bit better. I don't see anything in the goals at all, for example, about performing arts, right? Like we have a great band. I talk about that all the time, alumni band, whatever. You guys, we don't even have a musical director here at this school. The feasibility study, when are you going to advertise for people to come back again? Because there's no reason that should have been on hold for the past, it's been on hold for almost 2 years now. You guys need to do better and ask for community input. There's been a lot of people here talking. You guys also promised there's no goal in here at all about reviewing the health safety plan or anything else that goes on with this. Last month, numerous
Mrs.
of
McCreary,
you
that's
promised
3 minutes.
that you would come back and review the
Ms.
plan
McCreary,
in
that's
30
3
days.
minutes. Thank you for your comments.
And it's not even on the agenda, including working with local agencies to make it better, which is what you,
Thank you.
Lydia, said. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, we do have one more comment online. Krista's iPhone. Krista, will you please give your full name, agenda item you are talking about, and township of residence?
Hi, my name is Krista Collins. I am a resident of East Vincent, and I will be speaking on the goals. So I guess that's 13.1. I just wanted to make a comment that in previous months, we had quite the heated debate about the equity policy and the verbiage that was in it. At that time, we were promised by the board at the end of a very long meeting that there would be a follow-up listening sessions, and also that the wording in the policy would be reviewed and revised to make sure that we can all, as a community, and as parents that send our kids to this school, or some of us that will in the future, make sure that we're comfortable with what the policy states. And that has not been done. Obviously, I realize it is the beginning of the school year, but we were promised that at the end of the meeting, and we really need to make sure that happens. So that's my comment. I'm hoping that we can leave here tonight with some firm dates, some ideas of when this is going to happen, and kind of actually have some follow through to make sure that this policy is a lot better and a lot more thoroughly thought through than what is currently on paper. Thank you.
Hi, Amanda Cooper, East Vincent Township. I just also wanted to get up and say that I noticed when I looked at the goals earlier today, the blatant lack of any kind of clear accountability on which committee or who is doing all of these things. For example, I look at goal 1B, and one of the bullet points is explore opportunities for expanded academic offerings. And that's just one example. I feel like most of these bullet points are very high level, and they'll use a lot of buzzwords and, if I may say, a lot of fluff. Most of these bullet points have no target dates. So the one I just read, are we looking to have something in place by the end of this school year? Is this something that we're doing, having a committee on for the next 3 years? I don't know how that works, but I think a more clear picture of what these goals are looking like, and have some type of maybe even like a chart or something to show the timeline of when each of these bullet points are going to be targeted and worked on, and when the target end date would be. I just read one bullet point. I think out of maybe maybe 20 bullet points, I think 2 of them have actual target dates. And I just don't see how that makes any sense coming from a board who's overseeing a school district of this size. So that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Madam President, that's the end of public comment.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to item 6, which is board committee reports. A working session was held on September 13th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. The following committees met at this time: Curriculum and Special Education, Finance, and Buildings and Grounds. Item 6.2, Finance and Buildings and Grounds Committee. Mrs. Booth.
Thank you, Madam President. I hope I'm speaking loud enough. Several items referencing Finance and Buildings and Grounds were touched upon during the September board working session. 2 projects are actionable items embedded within the district goals. The Giza project, energy savings, and the district-wide service center, out of breath, both impacting financial and operational efficiencies. A service center pre-bid meeting was held Tuesday, September the 14th, and bid opening is scheduled for September 28th. Giza project efficiencies are in administrative review. We anticipate both items to come to the board as actionable during the October business meeting. Additionally, the committee approved a visual of the Ron Pearson plaque. Voting action items tonight: agenda item number 7, approval of recommended routine matters. 7.2 through 7.6, acknowledgement of July 2020 financial reports. Numbers 7.9 and 7.10, acknowledgement receipt of July 2021 tuition report, and receipt of Pennsylvania Department of Education funds, totaling $441,055 as presented. Agenda item number 8.1, recommended routine matters. Acknowledge receipt of gifts and donations as presented. Agenda item 9.2, approval of routine matters. 9.2, approval of bills for the month of July 2021. Breath time. New business, 13.4 through 13.8, approval of financially impacting items inclusive of 13.8, approval of resolution and senior citizens tax rebate program, and item 13.12, approval of a variety of professional services, again as presented. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mrs. Booth. Item 6.3, Chester County Intermediate Unit, Mrs. Munson.
So the Chester County Intermediate Unit had a meeting this past Wednesday, September 15th at 7:30 p.m. Even more exciting than that was that at 4 p.m. before that, they had a ribbon cutting for the new building, well, expanded building or building space for the Brandywine Virtual Academy. The Brandywine Virtual Academy is a CCIU operated virtual charter school that has been instrumental to many, I think, districts in the county and all of Pennsylvania in making sure that our students who want a cyber education have been able to get a cyber education this past school year and the current school year. So its needs have grown by leaps and bounds, and the new space is really well set up to handle the incoming influx of teachers needed for the incoming influx of students. So that was very exciting. We also had, the health and safety plan and other necessary things to ensure the smooth operation of the CCIU organization this year. And our next meeting will be on October 20th at 7:30 p.m. at the Service Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Munson. Item 6.4, Curriculum and Special Education Committee, Mrs. Stutzman.
Good evening, everybody. The Curriculum Committee met as part of the working session on September 13th, and there was one item on that agenda, and Dr. Soder reviewed with us the current plan for supporting students who may need assistance during quarantining during the school year. So for elementary students, the academic coach in each school has set up grade level Google Classrooms for teachers to use to provide checklists for students. And building substitute teachers have a schedule to provide some synchronous instruction by grade level throughout the day. We learned that for middle school and high school students, the classroom teachers provide assignments and updates in Google Classroom or Canvas for each class. And for students who need additional assistance, the school coaches or scholastic coaches, have called or had Google Meet sessions to assist students working remotely. If more students need to quarantine, additional support can be used at that time. That is it for our last working session, and the next curriculum committee is scheduled as part of the board working session on Monday, October 4th at 6 p.m. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stutzman. Item 6.5, Legislative and Policy Committee, Mrs. Munson.
So the next meeting of the Legislative and Policy Committee will be on September the 27th at 6:00 p.m. And so that would be the next date that we will have the opportunity to review the equity policy that was mentioned in comments. However, spoiler alert, I don't think we'll be voting it out of committee during that meeting because I think we will probably take comments in that meeting and then also wait until after some of the listening sessions have occurred to absorb any additional comments from the community that come in through those. So I do invite people to come and give us your opinions in that LNP committee session. And we are looking at, whether we can absorb and change the policy to adapt to community needs. However, the current policy is still in effect until we make any changes. So I would like people to understand there is no rescinding of the current policy. What is written right now is what is currently in effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Munson. Item 6.6, Personnel Committee, Mr. Friel.
There's no update on the Personnel Committee at this time.
All right, item 7, recommended routine matters. 7.1, motion to approve recommended routine matters. Consent items 7.2 through 7.10. The board will make a motion to approve the following routine matters, which are items 7.2 through 7.10 as action consent items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Deal, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. I did want to make mention, because I didn't at the beginning, we do not have Mrs. DiMarino tonight, but we still have a board majority with 8 board members. Item 8, recommended routine matters. 8.1, acknowledge receipt of donations, contributions, and gifts. Acknowledge receipt of donations, contributions, and gifts as presented. From the Pottstown Area Health and Wellness Foundation, the wellness grant from French Creek Elementary, or for French Creek Elementary School was $300. For East Vincent Elementary School was $600. For North Coventry Elementary School was $400, and for the middle school was $350. The Vanguard Matching Gift Program for West Vincent was $32, and for the middle school was $24. And then for the high school, the Coatesville Area School District NJRTC program received $250. The Military Order of the World Wars Philadelphia Center gave the NJRTC program $250. The Special Forces Association also contributed $250, and an anonymous donor to be used towards students' obligations was $250. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. DeFore, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 9, approval of routine matters consent items. 9.1, approval, motion to approve routine matters consent items 9.2 through 9.3. The board will make a motion to approve the following routine matters, which are items 9.2 through 9.3 as action consent items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Deal, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Booth, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10, board discussion.
I'd like to discuss the dashboard.
Do you want to discuss? Yeah.
Right. That's not on the agenda, but is it open discussion?
Mm-hmm.
All right, for us. So for the dashboard, and this is for the COVID dashboard, I want us to consider adding historical information to the dashboard. Like, if we're going to tell a story, I think we should tell the whole story, right? So that includes historical information.
So Cliff, I think what we did last year for the dashboard is it had weekly data per school for past weeks. Is that what you're looking for? It broken out by school?
Well, no.
For past data?
I mean, if we're posting things on the dashboard for a week, I want to be able to scroll back to the previous
Yes,
week.
to past weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a discussion about that today, and that is something we certainly can do. We were trying to more or less mimic how it's been reported by the Chester County Health Department. They're doing week by week, and then with a four-week history that they're showing. I know I had one or two emails about it. What we're doing is we're showing the number of new cases in each school per week. The issue is once we have a case that would have happened the preceding week, we don't update it in that school, but we update it in all of our cases down below. So for example, the first week of school when we started, I think there was only one case that was attributed to a school. But if you look at our dashboard now, there are 9 cases because these cases happened earlier. So it's something we can take a look at. And like I said, we spent some time talking about it this morning. If that's the will of the board for us to keep more of a running record of those cases, we can do that. We were just trying to simplify it and do it week by week and then keep a cumulative at the bottom.
Yeah, I would agree with Cliff. You know, one of the things that kind of frustrates me with the Chester County dashboard is, you know, I want to think back, well, what happened back in March? And it's almost impossible to get that information. So if we have a running tally, that'd be useful. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll third that. I was a little confused too before your explanation, Will, that you put out to us at the board question, you know, given the East Coventry and then our update on the numbers, and we're like, well, where was that 5? And if we're having that question, I think it's probably, you know, to have the history there and have the cumulative and explain what it is. I think that's just a better model on what's going on. I'd be in favor of that. Thank you.
So if I'm understanding the COVID dashboard, we had 9 the first week, 4 the second week, 4 last week.
Correct.
For a cumulative total of 17?
Correct.
That we'd split up them by school.
Correct.
Okay. Is that wouldn't imagine that's a huge administrative hurdle for you guys?
No, it's something we could do.
Okay.
Chester County hasn't been doing it well. I couldn't even get through the link for like 2 weeks. It was crazy. And until you sent me a link directly, I appreciated that.
Right.
Like I said, we were trying to simplify it and just do it week by week and keep the running total down below. But if we need a little more specificity, we can do that.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Any other discussion? No? Okay. All right, item 11, old business. Do we have any old business? Okay, no old business. Item 12, new business, approval of personnel matters consent items. 12.1, motion to approve personnel matters consent items 12.2 through 12.18. The board will make a motion to approve the following personnel matters, which are items 12.2 through 12.18 as action consent items. Any approval of appointment or personnel under these action consent items is expressly made contingent upon the district's ability to conduct and/or participate in the related program and/or activity in light of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. In the event the district schools are 1, closed to providing modified programming, 2, unable to conduct or participate in programs or activities due to direction or recommendation of outside agencies, including but not limited to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Pennsylvania Department of Health, the Governor's Office, the Chester County Health Department, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association, et cetera, or 3, the district administration determines not to conduct and/or participate in any program or activity to ensure the safety of students, staff, and the community. The district shall not be liable to compensate personnel appointed herein for such programs and/or activities. In the event some programs and activities are conducted and/or held on a limited basis, compensation for personnel shall be paid on a pro rata basis commensurate with the percentage of the program season activity that was held and during which students participated. The decision to cancel, discontinue, and/or alter programs and activities shall be at the exclusive discretion of the district administration as previously authorized by the board pursuant to the district's health and safety plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Friel, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. All right, item 13, new business. 13.1, approval of resolution, the Local Chamber of Commerce Month. Approval of resolution, Local Chamber of Commerce Month, October 2021, as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Deal, do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Melnizak, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 13.2, approval of the 2022 PSBA officers and at-large representatives. Approval of the 2022 PSBA officers and at-large representatives. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Melnizak, any discussion?
I believe it says 2021 on the agenda.
Oh, mine says 2022.
2022.
I wonder why I have a different agenda then.
Yeah, I have 21 on mine.
Yeah,
Is it printed different than the one? This is 2022 on here.
it does say on the
Mine
online
says-
version, it says 2022. So it is just the printed version.
I think it's just printed.
Okay, thanks.
Interesting.
Okay. I had a first, I had a second. We had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 13, approval of the 21-22 district goals. Approval of the 2021 district goals as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Deal, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Booth, any discussion?
A quick question on the goals. So I'm used to corporate goals, right? This is school goals. So usually with our goals, we follow up with an action plan, right, that we attach to the goals. And sometimes in the action plans, we also attach that to policy, right? That, if we have a policy that says, okay, it belongs in the goal, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the goal that you're using this policy, right? But in the action plan, it should have who's responsible for reaching the goal and how you're going to reach it, right? So we don't have really an action plan attached to these goals. These goals are somewhat broader, right? Which is fine. I've seen very broad goals, right? But underneath it, the action plan really should be how we achieve the goals, who's responsible for it, and more specific information, more data, so on and so forth. Do we get that? Do we have to, when do we get to see the action plan? I guess my first question. And is that your style of achieving your goals?
Correct. When we were doing our work, there was discussion with Mutiu around this concept of vital signs, which are actually the measurables that you're talking about. So our plan was to get the overarching goals approved, and then once the goals are approved, then we'll work with our team on developing those vital signs or those actionables that we will bring back. And another important part of that is checking on it regularly. So it's just not now and then the end of the school year. So once we have those developed, we'll have some regular updates and we'll be measuring that throughout the process. And there's a document that's developed to say who's responsible for the goal and the timelines.
Right, and if it attaches to a committee and who's.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that detail, right, I would expect to be in an action plan, not in a goal, right?
Correct.
So when do we get to see the action plan? And does it come out, do you produce it all at once? I'm not sure what your style is, right? Is it produced all at once or do you do it piecemeal per goal?
I'd like to produce it all at once. Once we get the goals approved, sit down and develop that.
Right, and so the public can actually see how we're going to achieve this goal.
Correct.
Well, and I would also think it should be discussed with the committees that we attach to the goals that help develop these goals, so that it's not just admin bringing their vitals, but it's us and the community as well, kind of weighing in on what those should be. So the fact that we attached each area to a committee, even though it's not stated on these slides, I think will help us get to that action plan.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the action plan. In addition to that, whenever you see the word, say for instance, increase by how much? By 1, right? I'm assuming that when you have the word increase in your goal, that you're actually going to state what the increase is.
Correct.
In the action plan and how you're going to make that increase.
Well, I think also you do have action plans developed. It's more so those vital signs that you're working to develop, correct?
Correct. The actual measurables, the vital signs.
Right, so we should see a line of sight between policy, action plan, goal.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to agree 100% on this because I've actually said exactly what many of the folks that came up here and said and last year, and I think made, Susan roll her eyes many times when I mentioned data and data-driven and things like that. And that's the one thing I struggle with these goals, because I'm used to seeing measurables in a dashboard. And I think that vital sign and that dashboard with the measurables added to this is a critical piece of this and a critical step. And I think that needs to come back to the board. And we need to then represent that to the public with that dashboard and what that looks like and what we're aiming towards for this to be, meaningful. Because I struggle with the same thing without having data to sink my teeth into and saying, okay, because it is, without data and without that dashboard, it is fluff, as someone said. So I do think we need to come back with that. Do we have a timeline that's reasonable to come back with the dashboards to say, here's where we're going to present? Is it mid-year thing? Is it a November thing? Is it, how can we give more resolution?
When you ask me off the top of my head, I'm thinking it would be reasonable to be back here in November having that discussion.
Okay.
Okay. So at a future meeting or during working sessions, if a goal is tied to a committee, should that committee meet independently to discuss how we're going to achieve this goal?
I think I agree with Mr. Deal. I think that's some conversations we can have with committee
Sure.
chair
Yep.
folks when we're developing those committee agendas. Yeah.
Okay.
Because as you know, that was really the process that we used to develop the goals by breaking into committees to take a look at that.
Sure. Sure, yeah. I just had to ask that question because I've seen goals that have too much detail and some goals that have no detail, right? But it should be followed up with an action plan if it's a broad goal.
Correct. And one of the issues we'll have to take a look at is establishing a baseline too. There are some goals where we may not have a baseline. So if you look at our goals, one of the things I think is critical is that we have a strategic planning, I'll call it an annual survey that you're giving out, so then that can give us some data from year to year. So that's something, in our communications, that's one of the goals to do that. And then we've talked about also securing the proper survey resources so that we're writing proper surveys to get the data that we need. So those are all included in the goal. So if there's something we can't measure now, we will develop questions in the strategic plan to measure that so that we have a baseline.
Okay.
I also think that in like agenda item 6, board committee reports, where we usually say this committee met on this date, this is what we talked about, if we can make those more pertinent to the actual goals, to talk about what action we took on goal 1A1 or whatever it might have been, that again will show the progress along the action plan so that we're accountable to that. And again, having the administrative liaisons present to be able to help us with that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. That's what we had discussed, is how do we tie that action back to the actual committee and what the work's being done by the committee. I think, as we release more information with goals and action plans and things like that, having that linkage of what committee is actually responsible is big. A lot of these, like the fiscal responsibilities tied to, a lot of these are pretty clear cut, but I think it's important to list it out though.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you so much for your time.
Any more discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to respond to some of the public comment about there's no well-defined equity goal. And I think the format that we have for district goals, it's been put in place and hasn't really been updated since our
It was
new-
updated since the last strategic plan or comprehensive plan we did. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there should be a separate section, maybe under student learning and growth, that's specific about educational equity, so that it's got a little spot of its own. Whereas if it kind of blends into everything else, and we don't know how to interpret that and how to measure it.
I would like to say it more strongly than that. I will not be voting for the goals tonight. I will be voting against them because I do not believe they are in alignment with our educational equity policy. And I believe that we owe it to the people in our community, both those who are pro and anti the equity work and the equity policy, to strongly delineate exactly which goal is the educational equity goal. Because the policy calls for having an educational equity goal. I don't see a goal labeled as educational equity in this set of goals, so I will not be able to vote for them.
So I had this question too, which goal that we have would cover equity?
Yeah, we had a lot of conversation around that, and the group that I was in was working on goal number 2, which was safe and caring environment, and several board members were in there, and Dr. Marchini, our People Services Director, who did a lot of the equity work last year. So what we wanted to do is keep the same overarching goals that we've had previously, because as I mentioned, we're going into the comprehensive planning process, so our goals could look completely different next year. So for the last year of our current comprehensive plan, we wanted to keep the same overarching goals, and we wanted to embed some of the equity work in. So in goal 2, if you take a look at our goals, and I can share just some of the verbiage in here that we were looking at to incorporate equity. So increase the percentage of students who report that they are empowered to voice their preferences and their need. I mean, I look at that as equity, for students feeling the ability to express their preferences. Confidence in relationship with self. Navigate complex relationships. A number of students who report experiencing name calling and insults. So there were a couple other things here. Increase the number of opportunities for students who take higher level courses at the secondary level. As we've looked at data, we've seen that it's disproportionate, the number of minority students that are in some of our higher classes. So we're trying to increase the numbers in those classes. And then also, and again, not to get too far into the details, but from the state audit, disproportionality in discipline with some of our special needs students, particularly our emotional support students of color. So goal 2.4 is increased behavioral tiered intervention so that we're not issuing as many suspensions to students. So those are some of the equity concepts that we just tried to build in the safe and caring environment under goal 2.
But I'm wondering if perhaps part of that should be also in goals 1A, 1B, because that will look more so at academic, equity.
So are you looking for stronger language in the goal? Is that what we're looking for? Because,
Well, from my perspective,
right.
we need
Yeah.
a goal called
Okay.
the educational equity goal, because that would be in alignment with the policy that we passed in July.
right, so.
And hiding it doesn't do anybody any favors. The people who want to know what we are doing for our educational equity plan on both sides want to know exactly which items are intended to be in alignment with our equity goals.
Right, so in your mind, there are things that you want to address through the equity policy that are not in goal number 2.
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
There are things that you want to address through our equity policy that are not in goal number 2. Because there are some things.
I don't care if we rename goal number 2. I don't care if we create a new goal. I just want to have a goal that is called the educational equity goal to bring this set of goals in alignment with our policy.
So you want the title.
It clearly says in the policy that we need an educational equity goal.
Sure, but what would be under that goal?
It could be the items under safe and caring.
Right.
It could be items under 1A, 1B.
Yeah, so that's why.
I am not tied to a specific, I just want it to be understood for the sake of our community,
Yeah,
which of our goals are tied to the educational equity goal.
right, yeah, no, I understand, and it's a little hard to express, but you want that title, but the things under number 2 are part of equity, as Dr. Stout is saying. So you want that title in the goal. I just want to understand. Right?
Because if we're going to call it something else just to avoid people being upset that we're doing it, I cannot get behind that.
Right, right. So I think we're both worried about and concerned about the content that is under goal number 2.
I thought that our upcoming L&P meeting was going to be to discuss the definition of equity so that the community would be less divided over it than what we witnessed at the, was it the July board meeting or whatever it was?
Right, but
And
the
so if we
policy-
put that in place, are we also going to include a revisit to the district goals to discuss how that new definition of equity that we'll discuss at the end of this month is going to change our view or maybe adapt the goals that we're voting on tonight?
I can't predict the future. I can only say what is in the current policy. The current policy calls for an educational equity goal.
Dr. Stout, is it necessary that we pass this today, or do we punt it and go to L&P and bring it back in the month of October with more definitive language that some of our board members are not really quite happy with?
I mean, it's not necessary that it gets passed tonight, but if we're to do work on this, like I've shared this as a draft with our principals, but our principals
Okay.
are waiting for these goals to be approved. And we were talking earlier about the measurables. We wait another month to approve them,
Okay.
then it's going to take a while to determine the measurables.
Okay.
So
Would it be, because I think it's partially, and I understand what you're saying, but it's partially somewhat of a semantical question of what are the labels here and what does it do? What's the core of what this accomplishes? And so I'm a little, like, I hear you. I think we should be explicit to people, and I understand that request. But I do think we should get on the business of the school district and be able to pass goals and do the work of the school district and allow the administration to build a dashboard. So I'm wondering if we just don't say, hey, while we're building the dashboard and the vision, can't we just build the equity dashboard at the equity, and because it does have elements of multiple, I mean, that what that policy says kind of goes across all facets of the school district. So if we, as we're building that pulse chart or the dashboard, I forget what you called it, Will, but, if we just don't like single out a specific one for equity and then come revisit, and if we need to call out a specific equity goal post the L&P meetings and a listening session, maybe we just add that as an explicit call out beyond, and if we feel like this doesn't cover it completely, as long as we're agreeing to, incorporate that, just so we can move to getting the dashboards done and getting the other, I think, data-driven stuff that we really, really need to make these goals meaningful.
Yeah.
And then come back and revisit the equity piece of this in October or November or something.
Yeah, I think I have, I'm kind of on the fence here because I don't want to hold up all the other goals over this issue, right? So if it doesn't pass tonight, does that prohibit you from creating the action plan for the other goals?
we can move forward.
With
but
everything
I'd like
else?
to be able to move forward, yeah, with everything. But we could, if one goal would not be approved, we would move forward with the other goal.
Do we have to approve all, so could we approve the other goals without approving that one?
Could we make an additional motion to, pass these goals, but then at next meeting, have a fifth goal, I guess, which is more specific towards equity. That way we get these guys running, but, we'll have some time to define equity, think of what we want in that new goal, so that way we're not kind of stalemating what we want to do right now.
I would suggest that we consider, if we're going to do something like that we not simply add another goal, because even Mewtwo, when we met with him, said 4 is already a lot, 3 is pretty good, 4 or 5 you can handle, 4 is probably about right. Now we're talking about 6. Like, if we went through these goals at some point and you wanted to recombine things and rename something, but everything we have listed here is pretty much still a component of what those goals were, I think that would allow administration to move forward. How we organize and title them, I think we could talk about later, but I'm in the camp of, we got to move forward, because we're talking about what our goals are in November. We're going to be halfway
Right.
through the year.
Yeah, that's my concern. So I understand that the language probably needs to be stronger for number 2. I think some of the things that are there, Dr. Stout, correct me if I'm wrong, you're intending as this was part of the goals is tied to the equity plan.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what Jennifer is saying is that the language isn't in the actual goal that says this is tied to the equity plan, but the action plan will tie to the equity plan, right? So I don't want to hold things up. I think November is kind of late to pass goals. I understand what you're saying. Maybe we should add on another goal, but I think that we already have it here under number 2, right? It's just not titled.
I think the other point too that John made is we're going to be revisiting these goals at every committee meeting.
Sure,
As
yeah.
with each committee that's, working on specific goals. So I think, as you move forward with Safe and Caring, the People Services and Curriculum Committee can update as they go.
Yeah, and we don't even have all the data because we haven't had the listening sessions that go into the part of equity and part of, it's not a one-shot thing. This has to live with us throughout the whole entire school year.
Can I?
But we could amend, could we kind of amend the goals?
The goals, I don't know.
Oh, Lydia wants to talk too.
Real quick. So I'm in agreement that, we should have an educational equity goal. However, I also don't want to stall us moving forward on these goals and defining what the action plans are and the vital signs. I do understand, Dr. Stout, you're thinking about next year. I think we should commit to having an educational equity explicitly called out in our future goals. I'm wondering if there's a compromise in here that, because it's not just the second goal, Cliff, goals 1A and B also have items in there that I think speak to some of the things we've been talking about. But to Jennifer's point about not only those who really want to explicitly see equity in our growth, but those who are worried about what does equity mean, can we note which of these goals, for example, illustrative, because I don't know, I haven't read, I'm not actually attributing them to, but 1A.1 and then 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 all have an E next to them because they are attributing to or contributing to our equity, educational equity efforts. So, and then in our action planning, we would also have that notation, and then we would be very clear, while it would not be its own separate goal, we would know exactly what action steps we're taking toward educational equity so that everybody on both sides of this fence know exactly what it is that we're talking about when we say equity and what we're doing to move it forward.
And I think that would be a reasonable compromise if it clearly states at the beginning of the presentation, the following, our educational equity goals are marked with an E or something, just something that clearly states which goals are educational equity goals.
Won't most of those goals be educational equity goals? When I read those
One would
goals, I
hope.
think all of them should be viewed with a lens towards that. Will they not be?
I'm kind of there too, John.
As I read them, that's what I'm reading.
And I think we
Well,
need
I
to
don't
be.
know, goal 4 and goal 5 might not be, I think there's enough in here that we could notate them. I just don't want us to not know exactly what we're doing toward educational equity on the one hand. And on the other hand, I don't want us to stall and not move forward because we still have a lot of work to do, right?
Yeah. I just think the real equity tracking and are we making progress on it is going to be on those vital signs, and what are those vital signs and what are those metrics, because they could live and breathe across the entire 5 goals, and I think they should live and breathe against the 5 goals. I'd also like just to, because we start, and it's a language we're using too, and I just think we should be cautious about like sides here. I sat in this meeting, and while people were being, disagreeing, I don't think we were disagreeing on the same stuff. So I saw a lot more common ground than I did see disagreements. The main point that I saw come in part is I don't want CRT and critical race theory in the school district and curriculum changes and how that, in that sense of what was being broadcast on like cable or some other information, it has nothing to do with what we did as an equity policy here. And I think part of the concern parents brought is, are we able to more explicitly call that out in a way and having the LMP meeting to do that, to say, how do we put those fears aside and say, here's what we intend and what we're trying to accomplish here. And so I do think the vital signs and we'll go across all these goals. But I think, I don't know what the way to move this forward, but I just feel like equity should breathe across the entire school district and everything we're doing here. And we should just, the alignment we're going to try to seek with, what is it we intend? What is it the community's feedback to us is on this? And maybe we do play with the wording a little bit. But I have a hard time saying this is equity. This is, we're not going to be equitable to the community relations and invite communities in, because are we equitable there? How about activities? Do we give all our kids trying out for Odyssey of the Mind because we get them in first and second grade? Is that equitable, and not give kids in fifth and sixth grade where we're catching up because of this stuff? There's a whole bunch of ways that we could track and understand equity, and we should, and it should be part of everything we're doing here. So I just want to be careful not to limit ourselves and say this is just what it means right now, nothing else.
No, and what I am talking about when I say both sides is I think there are people who are concerned that we are not doing enough, and people who are concerned that we might be doing things they will be uncomfortable with. And I think the only way to answer both of those questions is to clearly state, for the things that are most clearly aligned with equity and bringing better equity to our district, for those specific things that are at the very top of the pile that are clearly aligned with that goal, to mark them so that people can look at them and say, okay, now I understand. If we say that it's everything, nobody's going to understand. If we can point to a couple of clear examples that people say, okay, I understand now, that is worth doing, then we build a community better.
It also is somewhat limiting, though, right? Because then I only look at those goals that you designated as equity instead of viewing all the goals in the district with an equity lens, right? So when we talk about developing a human resources plan,
And
when we
how is
talk
that
about
different from-
allocating funding, when we talk about, well, we talked in the past about recruiting. What kind of teachers are we recruiting? Are we extending
We
efforts
don't
to
have a
diverse
recruitment goal in
communities?
our goals right now. So how can,
Human
we should-
resource plan.
We should have that across all of our goals. It should be a lens, and it should not limit us.
Correct.
I agree with you 100%. It should be built into everything we're doing. But if we're not able to point to which of these goals are furthering it, we are going to have parents on both sides, because they're the ones who want to see more, and they're ones who are worried that we're doing things behind their back, essentially, right? That we're not being transparent about what it is we're trying to achieve. So if we should, I think, be more transparent and say, these are the ones out of these 5 goals, these are the ones that we're explicitly trying to move our educational equity forward with. That doesn't limit us or prevent us from having an equity lens against everything we're doing. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Right, if identifying those top few goals that we think are most critical to moving educational equity forward, if that is preventing us from using an equity lens in the rest of everything that we're doing, then I would say that naming none of them as educational equity goals is even more limiting. I don't see how calling out a couple that are clearly aligned prevents us from doing any sort of equity stuff anywhere else.
So what are you proposing to change in the policy, in the equity goals to move it forward? What are you proposing to change?
The wording of the policy specifically says that the superintendent is responsible for developing the educational equity goals.
But that's not really an answer to the question, right? The question is, what are you proposing change here? So can we change to safe, caring, and equitable, create a safe, caring, equitable environment? Does that satisfy that?
I would be fine with either changing a specific goal name to that goal name, educational equity, or what Lydia had suggested, saying these are our educational equity goals and marking them with an E. Either of those
Right.
solutions
So that's a
sound
notation,
acceptable to
but
me.
you want the actual wording in the title.
I believe that the wording needs to be in there because otherwise it's not clear.
Okay, so do you want to make an amendment?
Can I do that? Can I?
You
can make a motion.
You make a motion
To
to
amend the motion.
All right, so, well, let's just have one more moment of discussion. Is there a general preference between changing goal 2's wording versus marking them with an E for certain goals?
Well, if you mark them with an E, it's not going to be titled. It's just notated.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
Cliff,
that's-
she said she's fine with either or, just as long as we're calling out
Mhm.
what is moving our educational equity forward. So
Right,
if you
but if
preference
it's-
for an
yeah.
e-notation versus a title change, that's the question on the table.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that if it's in the equity policy, that we have to have an equity goal.
Can I make a
A
suggestion?
notation is not a
Yes.
title.
I would say add a goal and just say the district will advance its educational equity efforts through the implementation of goals blank above. And then you're just listing your goals, you're not adding any more. You're just identifying specifically, you satisfy the policy's requirement to have an educational policy goal or equity goal, I'm sorry. And you're not adding any additional, you're not making it more burdensome. I'm sorry, I'm saying you're not making it more burdensome on the district and or the administration by adding a substantive goal. What I proposed was that we added an additional goal, which would be to advance educational equity in the district through the implementation of goal 2.1, 2.2, whichever ones you want to identify. That satisfies the policy concern that you have, and it keeps things moving, and it gives it, and identifies for the public what we're referring to when we're talking about equity. That's just a suggestion to try to move this forward.
It's essentially a combination of what I was saying and what Jennifer was saying. So you have the title, and instead of putting an E next to them, you just list them under the title. Although that doesn't address the concern that like John and I think Paul have brought up about it being something that's a lens through which we look at everything, but I would make it clear, I still think we should do that in our action planning, but to solve what the issue at hand is around our policy, we could do it that way. I think it's a decent suggestion.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Okay, so may I propose an amendment to our agenda item 13.3, that we would approve the district goals as presented with the addition of another goal called the educational equity goal that would identify the specific goals under the other sections.
You got to
that-
say what they are. You got to,
Yes.
you got
Okay.
to, you got to articulate. I would
So it was,
try to articulate it.
I believe we were looking at goal 1.A.2 and 1.B, was it B.2? 1.B.3, was that one of the ones that we called out?
1.B.3 should be because we need data.
Yep.
Yeah, the dashboards.
1.B.3 and
All the twos.
all the items under goal 2.
2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4.
I think you have to look at goal 5 as well.
Thank you.
And possibly 3.3. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm asking, I'm not.
I'm okay with letting go of 3 if we can get one of 5's in. I just have to figure out which, so the 5.1.
Yeah.
So those would be our highest priority educational equity goals for this school year.
If that was a motion, I'll.
Yeah, should I repeat
I think you should
that set?
re-say that and spell out so you're making an emotion to
Right.
amend the motion
Yes, the
for
motion
the
to-
equity goal to add and then spell out which one they are. So
Right, I'm making a motion to amend motion 13.3 to add an additional goal that would be our educational equity goal that would identify the other items 1.A.2, 1.B.2, 1.B.3, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4, and 5.1 as our educational equity goals.
I'll second it.
I would just ask Dr. Stout, does that create any
Right.
kind of issues that you foresee pursuing that kind of approach?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Does that mean that you've got to now create an action plan for
No, I mean,
that goal, or?
I think what we're doing essentially is just identifying these as equity-based goals. We would still be looking at the same action plan.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, maybe you can call out on a dashboard or the vital sign thing, just the equity pieces, so it'd be easy to identify. And I think if we just, instead of the other items, we just say our O&J equity goals will be advanced through the implementation of these goals, just so it's a little more, in the open statement. So if we could say that would be okay with you?
Yes.
All right.
Ms. Stutzman, is that a friendly amendment or a revision to the amendment okay with you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is this listed as an amendment or an addendum?
This is a motion to amend the existing motion.
Does it need to be
Thank you.
second?
It does
Already
need to be
was.
seconded and approved.
Lydia seconded.
Seconded, okay.
Vote to approve the motion to amend.
Just take a vote.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Now you got to vote
Now
on
you
the
have to
goal.
vote on
You got to vote on the goal.
amended
You have to
motion.
vote on the
It's a little
All right.
tedious.
So going back then, okay, so then any more discussion? So am I starting a discussion, or do I need to? Okay,
There, take
all
a
right.
vote.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, 13.4, approval of an amendment to settlement agreement and general release. Approval of an amendment to settlement agreement and general release as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Deal, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. DeFore, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.5, approval of grievance settlement agreement with Roberts Education Association. Approval of grievance settlement agreement with Roberts Education Association to resolve the 10/16/20 grievance as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Melnazek, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.6, approval of tuition agreement for non-resident enrollment in accordance with policy 202. Approval of a tuition agreement for non-resident enrollment for student A in accordance with policy 202, pupils' eligibility of non-resident students for the 21-22 school year as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. DeFore, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.7, approval of non-resident enrollment for a 12th grade student. Approval of non-resident enrollment for a 12th grade student in accordance with policy 202 as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. DeFore, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Munson, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.8, approval of resolution and senior citizens tax rebate program. Approval of resolution and senior citizens tax rebate program for the 21-22 fiscal year as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. DeFore, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.9, approval of Fall 21 Community Swim Program. Approval of Fall 21 Community Swim Program as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. DeFore, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Deal, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.10, approval to establish a student activity. Approval to establish a student activity club in accordance with the provisions of Section 511 of the Pennsylvania School Code and School Board Regulation 122A or 122B as presented. This approval also provides for the establishment of accounts within the student activity accounting system when applicable. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Munson, do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. DeFore, any discussion?
Can we all join?
I have to explain what it is first.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.11, approval of student activity club advisor and student officers. Approval of student activity club advisor and student officers in accordance with the provisions of Section 511 of the Pennsylvania School Code for the 21-22 school year as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Deal, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Booth, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.12, ratification and/or approval of professional services and/or maintenance agreements. Ratification and/or approval of professional services and/or maintenance agreements as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Melnizak and Mrs. Booth, I'll give you the second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item 14, which is public comment. Information, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegations pertaining to any item. Speakers are to indicate your name and township residence. Speakers will be limited to not more than 3 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in future deliberations. And then as just a reminder, our email address is listed there as well if you'd like to receive a written response. And then just for a guideline for anyone joining us on Zoom, if you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function. And then when it's your turn to speak, please state your name and township of residence.
Mrs. Prophet, we're going to start with the virtual comment first. We have Krista on the iPhone. Krista, please give your full name and township of residence.
Hi, Krista Collins, East Vincent Township. I just wanted to circle back to the goals when you talked about, safe and caring environment. There were some pretty alarming things that happened since the start of school with regards to the mask mandate. And I'm not here for the purpose of debating the mask mandate. I'm here to talk about the fact that several teachers took it upon themselves, or maybe they were fearful of what would happen to them if they did not watch the mandate and enforce it to the extreme. There is one incident that was extremely alarming. I know that it has been brought up to the school, but I think it is important that everybody understand what happened. I mean, there was tape applied to a child's face in the name of holding a mask where it quote unquote belongs. That is child abuse. It is absolutely disturbing. And I cannot believe that there was no correspondence from the school to the parents in any way. And I realize that if there is some sort of an investigation going on or something like that, that you are probably not able to share the unfortunate details of what happened, but the community needed to know that the administration and that the school stands by the safety of the students at all costs. And that did not happen. There should have been something that went out to the teachers, to the parents immediately, that you take the children's safety very seriously, and that did not happen. So I'm really quickly going to read a couple other things that have been reported. And these are all anonymous. I will not say who said them. My niece said her teacher threatened this tape in the middle school last week. This is OJR2. The teacher is reportedly, I'll share that privately. My son attends French Creek Elementary and just told me that they have a new recess rule. They must remain 3 feet apart or they will have to put their masks back on. Per the mandate, masks are not required outside. This is for 3rd grade. And let's see, my 3rd grader told me that he was getting in trouble for sneezing in the classroom and are made to change masks. He said that he holds his sneeze in for fear of getting yelled at. This is at French Creek. My 3rd grader said he is not allowed to refill his water bottle, also at French Creek. I can't believe that you guys aren't being made aware of what's going on here. Children cannot be denied access to water. They cannot have tape applied to their faces, and children cannot be threatened to have tape applied to their faces. And I really hope that the board and the administration is going to take this as a public lesson that you need to stand up for the kids. and a cautionary tale of a Downingtown incident that happened just last
That
week.
would be 3 minutes. Thank you for your comments. The next person online is Christine McAfee. Christine, please give your full name and township of residence. Okay, we'll go on to the next person is Trish Poley. Trish, please give your full name and township of residence.
Hi, my full name, Trish Poley from West Vincent.
Go ahead.
Hi, just wanted to thank all the educators, all the administrators, the school board. I think you guys are doing a fantastically amazing job in the pandemic we're living through, like once in 100 years. Again, I just have to reiterate, please, everyone, do not go to social media, do not go to your news source for any information that you should be getting from your doctor or your pediatrician. And in terms of the, please excuse my my ignorance, but I think it was the equity school choice or the equity. I'm so sorry, I can't. I think you need to be transparent more to parents, to educators, to the what you're trying to just educate people in, because I didn't understand it. I sat through this and I'm back and forth what you're trying to communicate to people. But in any event, thank you very much. Good night. Bye-bye.
Madam President, that is the end of comments from our Zoom participants.
Hi, Colleen Blute, North Coventry Township, East Coventry Township. About 2 months ago, I attended a board meeting. I think it was a board meeting, it might have been a committee meeting. And I sat right where this gentleman is sitting. I had spent the entire day wearing a mask, and I really wasn't into comments, made no comment. However, there was one person. And I want the community to understand that comment means you talk to the board. You ask them a question. I don't expect you to give me an answer. I don't expect her. I don't expect him. I don't expect him. I expect all of you to come together with one answer coming from Ms. Prophet, as she's the board president. If it's a question, not to give me your opinion. I don't need your opinion. I want your answer. However, that didn't occur at that meeting. There was a woman who came forward, and if you know where I teach, you know where I'm coming from on this. She got up, started speaking to you, then decided to face the audience. I'm not interested in talking to them, and she shouldn't be either. She's using it for a political platform. She should have been talking to you. And then to top the whole thing off, she called the community a name that I will not repeat. In my estimation, when she said that, she was that. And I would have stood up and said, stop it. You have no right to call me that. But she did. She made our school district look bad. I don't want that to happen. You guys work hard to make sure we are the best. And you give these teachers what they need. But for that person to say that hurt. And you, as a board, allowed it to happen. I don't want it to happen again. I don't want to hear that word come out of another person and call me that when you have no idea what I do for a living. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nancy Mullen. I'm from East Nantmeal, and I wasn't planning to have anything to say tonight, but after hearing this meeting, I'm going back to the July meeting where a lot of parents were talking about equity. That was a big topic. And at that time, parent after parent after parent stood up here and talked about how Owen J. Roberts bent over backwards to do anything possible to help their child. That was my takeaway. That you guys were helping children who had needs. And yet, you know, what we're doing now is you're all debating how you're helping children or whether we're helping children because we're using the word equity. I think if you want to sit around and ask yourselves, what is our equity policy? Maybe you could start by asking yourselves, where were we not helping children in the last 10 years? Where were we not being equitable? Where were we not providing services? Where were we not taking special needs into account? And I don't think you're going to find very much. But because you need to slap equity on it, you're so anxious to have equity slapped on there. You're sitting here all trying to figure out what to do. You've been doing it. And just because the word equity got thrown out there doesn't mean you're not doing your job. I think separating kids into those that are going to have the E emblazoned on their shirt is a terrible idea. Service the needs of the kids. It doesn't have to have the word equity anywhere. Do your jobs and service the needs of the kids. And don't separate them into the equity kids and the non-equity kids. What a terrible thing to do. Just terrible. I mean, just think about this before you are so anxious to use the word equity, and that makes everybody feel good. It's nothing about educating children. Ask yourselves, if there's a child not succeeding, if there's a group of children not succeeding, what are we going to do about it? Let's look at this. You're already doing that. You're already looking and saying, why are some kids not succeeding at this? Why are some kids not succeeding at that? Go get the data. I'm all for it. Go find the data about why a certain group isn't succeeding. Find that data, look at it over a number of years, and figure out what you can do. It doesn't have anything to do with equity. There is no such thing as equity of outcome, and you all know that. You can have equality, you can give everybody an equal opportunity, but there is no possible way to have equity of outcome. And you all know that. So, you know, there's no point in having this conversation about whether every kid can have the same outcome. Of course they can't all have the same outcome.
Thank you for your time.
Look at sports.
That would be 3 minutes.
Does the nerd get on the lacrosse
Thank you
team?
for your comments. Thank you.
My name is Karen Walsh. I'm with East Vincent Township. I just wanted to use a little bit of common sense here. Listen, I don't know about the whole equity thing. I kind of agree with her. it is what it is. I'm more about the mask. I sent you an email about my son, something that happened in school, and I'm just going to use common sense. Mrs. Booth spoke tonight. Everybody heard it. Everybody heard her speak. Twice she had to stop because she couldn't breathe. Twice she had to catch her breath. I watched people back here who had it down below their nose. They go to talk. All I want to say is you've got kids that sit here for 8 hours a day with a mask on their face and they can't breathe. My son comes home with a sore throat. Please consider a choice. Let these kids decide. My kid has anxiety and he had to go to the nurse. They sent him home. We had to have him tested for COVID because the nurse decides he needs to have 2 things wrong with him, 2 symptoms to send him home. So first she said he had a fever because she adds 10 points when she takes his forehead temp, and then changed her story. When I asked Mr. Kohler about it, he says, oh, you'll have to forgive her. She's so overwhelmed. I said, so you're telling me with 1 symptom that he feels nauseous because he has anxiety, you're gonna make me go get him tested? He said, yes. I'm asking you, please start making it a choice for these kids because it's just not fair. Thank you.
Hi, Amanda Cooper, East Vincent Township. I recognize you guys are working hard, but I think there's a common theme here, and just bear with me, I'm gonna call it out here. So the governor's order. Masks are a bit of a moot point at this point, but just bear with me. So we all came here last month, and there was, people for mask optional, a lot of people for mask optional, probably half your community, right? Half of the room. And you, as elected civil servants, elected to represent your community as a whole, alienated half of your community at that point, okay? So you're not listening to your community. You are elected to be here for your community, and you're not listening to them. The next thing is the equity policy. The equity policy was jammed down our throats in June. In July, you had a packed room of people for the policy and for people that had concerns about the policy. And a woman at the end of that meeting said it best. She stood up and said, "You have a problem here. You passed a policy that caused this divide. You need to fix the policy and identify what equity means. You guys caused that divide that night in that room." And now what happens? We are here tonight because you guys didn't follow through in a timely manner. You are here discussing your goals, and you can't pass your goals because you haven't followed up on what you promised your community you would back in July to follow up on the equity policy. And here we are in September, and we still have no answer. Now, apparently there's a meeting next week, but why didn't we do it over the summer? And someone, I heard, through the grapevine, oh, well, that committee doesn't meet over the summer. Well, guess what? The person running the show should have called the meeting for something that important, okay? So do you sense a common theme here? You're not listening to your community, and you're kind of just going on however you want to run the business here, run the show. And that's not how it is. You have left your community hanging, literally. So I just want to say also, on a personal note, in May, this past May, I came to my first school board meeting here just to get the lay of the land. And here I am in September, and I've been up here speaking to you every school board meeting. My husband and I, I'm a parent of 2 elementary age kids that live in the district. They do not attend O&J Roberts schools. My husband and I moved here from Center City, Philadelphia, to have a viable public school option, and I don't have that today. I do not feel comfortable sending my kids to O&J Roberts schools because of everything that happened with the mask. You did not listen to your community. Everything that happened with the equity policy, you did not listen to your community. So let's make efforts to get the house in order, and by listening to your community and making OJR great again.
That'd be 3 minutes. Thank you for your comments.
So I said that about the goals. So this is the second meeting in a row where you guys have changed an agenda item, although I appreciate you working more on the goals tonight and bringing up data, but this is the second meeting in a row where you guys have amended an item and allowed no public comment on it. So people can say that's a violation of Robert's rules or whatever, the Sunshine Act, but 5 of you can do whatever you want, all right? But that's the second time you guys did it. And part of the problem with the goals is you took no public comment or input. There were about 15 of us here in this room last week. You guys allowed no public comment. 0 public input went into the goals at all. And I'll hold this up for you guys. You had a number of goals from last year that said progressing, and we don't even know if these goals were done, like implement new elective programs at the high school level on the revision cycle. Did that happen? It says progressing, right? So another goal is the health safety plan that you guys put on the Pupil Services Committee that you guys eliminated the committee, right? So just because Governor Wolf swooped in and said masks for all didn't mean you guys had to take that. You, Lydia, said last month that you were supposed to work with people to do more things. You guys have these positions. You need to take it as a matter of privilege that you have these positions. You guys have done more with these policies and no public comment or input to divide this community than anything else. Lydia, last year, when there were
Mrs. McCreary,
I'll change it.
I just don't want you to address the board, please, not an individual board member.
Last month, when that comment was made to work, I will remind this board that 5 women, along with me, lobbied our whatever off down at Chester County to allow all the children in this district to have sports. That was Dawn, Dana, myself, Donna, and Shasta, and another friend, Maureen, from Great Valley. We put in so many hours, probably more hours than you guys have put in the past year. You guys need to do something more for this community. You guys said mask in place. You then also had a discipline policy that you put in and did not review with anybody at all. And you are sending kids home that are quarantined to have no education at all. What are you guys doing for the kids in this district? Seriously, you guys need to do a better job. Thank you.
My name's Todd Vrecchia, Warwick Township. A couple of things I wanted to speak on. Ms. Prophet, I was here last week for the workshop meeting. I took time out of my schedule and I came in because I had a son who was quarantined because he was unfortunate and at the wrong place on the wrong bus. I had a big problem with the fact that he was not educated while he was quarantined. I came in here to spend my time to talk to you and the board members with what was really happening in my household at that time. The true effect of you guys not having an education plan for my son. How that was actually, hurting him in the beginning of the year. But there was nobody here to talk to me because you took no public comment and you quickly raced out of the meeting. That is essentially kind of the hallmark of what the community is getting from you guys right now. It seems like your priorities are so far out of whack, i.e. spending time trying to figure out how many times we can cram the word equity into a sentence, instead of worrying about the core function of what you're all supposed to be doing, which is providing a solid education to the kids of the taxpayers of this district. You're not doing it. And unfortunately, your equity policy, which is the most ambiguous piece of crap I've ever seen in my life. Nobody's feelings here are going to be hurt because they didn't come from you guys. There's 4 other districts with the identical policy, with the identical wording that came from outside of this district, which even more emboldens my point that it's not representative of this community. That's what you're spending your time doing instead of worrying about the kids in the community. And I'm asking you honestly, as a taxpayer, as a father of 3 kids in this district, if you do not have the intestinal fortitude to do what you've been elected to do, I respectfully ask that you resign your position, because it has gotten so bad and so incompetent with the things that you guys are spending your time doing. It seems like this is nothing more than potentially a political stepping stone for you, but it's definitely about you and not about us or our kids. Thank you.
Do you have any more public comment on Zoom?
We do. We have one new person. Tavener Bonsall. Please give us your full name and township of residence.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, thanks. My name's Tavener Bonsall. I am from North Coventry. I have 2 kids in the elementary school. I just want to point out that the reason the word equity needs to be included in this is because groups of children have been left out. The Title IX report from 2009 showed that, and that is from our district, that is from our schools, so it must, it's representative of our community. It has nothing to do with equity of outcome, it's the equity of opportunity and support. To include equity in the goals is to ensure that all children are supported, not just the majority. Certain community members say that they feel alienated because they think equity means equal outcomes, and they feel it's divisive because they're not listening to what you as the board are saying, but they're listening to the politicians that are weaponizing the term. Everyone needs to start listening to the actual goals and the policies and the language that's in them. As far as the masks, there are just as many people on both sides of the issue. So the compromise of having masks when we're in the higher rates and having no, or the choice of masks when we're in the lower transmission rates was exactly listening to the community. And I appreciate that I was also heard, not just some of the other members. So I do just want to say that I appreciate the board taking all the views into account.
And then we have Danielle Willauer. Please give us your full name and township of residence.
Danielle Willauer, North Coventry.
Go ahead.
I know it's not a time to deliberate with the board, but really it's never a good time to deliberate with the board. We send emails and we get pretty 3-sentence answers. And I know we keep preaching this equity and equity for all or students that are left out, but sometimes it actually does leave out even more students, especially kids that can't wear a mask and people that want to say, well, they can get an exemption. Well, not all exemptions are approved. There are children with serious issues that cannot be masked. And I unfortunately had to pull both of my children from the district because of the mask issue and because my voice was not heard. But also, I'd like to bring up what we're saying in elementary schools on the first week of school, where we're lining up students and asking them to identify their pronoun. I just don't think it's appropriate. I think it might be age specific. Maybe in high school it would be more appropriate. But these children were confused and they were made to out loud in front of the whole class identify what pronoun they prefer. Some kids didn't even know what they were being asked. They asked, are you asking if I'm a guy? Are you asking if I'm gay? Do we really need to push this on our children in elementary school? I just want everyone to really consider that and think about that. And that's what has parents concerned, not cable news talking points. We've done our research. We've attended the trainings that the teachers are training. We've read the books. We've done our research on all the speakers that are coming in. And we know what we're talking about. It has nothing to do with sound clips. I promise. Thank you.
Madam President, everyone has spoken. There are just repeat.
So we have a gentleman who hasn't spoken yet.
Okay.
Hi, Rick Cameron, South Coventry Township. I was not planning on speaking at all tonight, but after witnessing what I just witnessed, I was here at Monday night's work session. And it was said that we were never given a chance to speak. Once again, you decided what your goal was going to be. And then tonight, you called an audible. What was discussed Monday has now been changed, all for the equity policy, the equity lens. For that reason, I'm running for school board. Make Ojera great again.com.
Krista's iPhone, name and township of residence, please.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to finish what I was saying before, and I did run out of time. I'll take 30 more seconds. There was one other incident. So I talked about the quotes from parents throughout the community. There was one other incident of, and I know that Dr. Stout and the principal have been emailed about this. I believe it was the end of last week, and this parent has not received a response. So children were forced to wear masks in gym class in elementary school, and they were playing dodgeball. Parents were told that kids would be outside as long as possible to accommodate this ridiculous mask mandate. And when it was moved inside, they would be given safer activities to do. This really needs to be done, because this is, even though I don't agree with the mask mandate, if you're reading it, what the teachers are doing is not following it. So you're opening yourselves up to a massive, massive lawsuit issue. And I'm pretty sure ONJ has had enough of those lawsuits with things that have happened. You cannot have kids that are like out of breath, can't breathe under a mask, playing dodgeball, and then they have to stick their head out a door in order to get a breath. So, and the other thing that I wanted to bring up with regards to the taping incident that happened in our school, there was a incident at Downingtown School District where a teacher forced a child to apply tape to his own face. I want you to pay attention to this part. He had a latex allergy and broke out in a rash. That teacher, that school, the entire state and the governor's office with this ridiculous mandate is lucky that that child did not go into anaphylaxis over that, because that can happen with a latex allergy. So again, I implore you to please take a stand, do something to support these kids and to make sure that you're putting their safety first, because these are true examples of things that have happened, and kids that are terrified and have anxiety over the mask. It is causing more harm than it could be argued good that it is causing. So please take this into consideration and stand up and do the right thing for these kids. Thank you.
There's Mallory Kocheg. Please state your full name and township of residence, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Mallory Kochig. I live in East Coventry. My kids go to East Vincent. I apologize if this was already brought up. I had unfortunately to join late to the meeting, but I, bouncing off a little bit of what Krista said, I actually did email Dr. Stout and Mr. Smith, our principal, just asking about the masking during gym. And from where I'm coming from, I think that if we are going to follow the mandate or the order, whatever it's called now, we should follow the entire thing. Because my son was unfortunately made to sit out on the bleachers as a punishment because he was putting down his mask. I did speak to the gym teacher about this, and I understand that teachers are, being put between a rock and a hard place. But essentially, he said he's waiting to hear from his higher ups on whether or not he's allowed to have children take off their masks inside. And I just think that if we provided safe activities last year that were 6 feet apart indoors, that we should be able to appropriately do that as well this year, just to give children an option of whether or not they would like to remove their masks if they're more comfortable in the gym, since Governor Wolf himself did write that into his order, and Chester County Health Department did publish that publicly, even just on their Facebook page. They specifically said physical education classes may be omitted from the indoor masking rule. So I am just asking if we could please quickly get some type of communication sent down the line to these principals and teachers so that kids aren't hearing one thing from the state or from their parents, but the school is only listening to part of the order, not the whole thing. So I want to be consistent here, because I've had to be consistent for 1.5 years of everything that's been coming down the line from the state. So I think that this is kind of going in our favor, and is good that we can give these kids an option when they're inside. And also for quickly the Running 101 program that is starting soon at the school, where the kids are practicing to end up running the 5K at the high school. If they can't have practice indoors when the weather, or outdoors when the weather is bad, they'll move indoors, which I believe is a sports practice, which does not need a 6-foot barrier to be able to take off your mask to practice. So if these things could just be sent down to these teachers and faculty and staff so that our kids can have this option. And I think it's just a safe thing all around, and good to follow the order as a whole and not just kind of pick and choose. Thank you.
Oh, no, we got one right behind you.
How's everybody doing? My name is Brooks Rowland. I'm a resident of Warwick Township. I got 3 kids in the school district. I feel like what we're dealing with is what we would call in the military as a self-inflicted wound. We talk about the equity policy, and everybody's talked about it, so I'm not going to beat the dead horse about it, but we haven't readdressed that topic. It is still a divide in the community. We look at goals that are being set. I set corporate goals all the time at work. We've got to set goals, but as we set the goals, we got to make sure they're measurable. I appreciate the exchange back and forth about creating those measurable those benchmarks and everything that we're looking for. But if you look at the SMART doctrine on building those goals, you want to make sure that you're identifying the right goals. I still think that we're completely off target, though. We spent 35, 40 minutes tonight listening about the exchange about how do we stick an E into our goals. Why are we talking about sticking an E? I have to agree. We've looked at it for 10 years, and I understand there's some statistics and reports out there, but the parents that come up here, not some state bureaucracy running a report, we've had multiple parents come out and talk about how the district has gone above and beyond to support their kids. We need to focus on education. We see this, and I understand. I don't think the equity policy is a good policy. I think we need an equality policy. We treat everybody equally. I think I said that at the last meeting. I believe in equality. We treat everybody, no matter where they come from, no matter how they work. I grew up with a single mother who made like $5 an hour. Everything I have, I worked for, but that was because I was given the opportunity. I was given an equal opportunity. I want to see you refocus your efforts and get away from all the politics, all the social agendas, and I want to see you stick to education. You know, I want to know that we're going to measure how is the reading capability of our students? How is the math? How are we going to measure how well they're doing in math? How are we going to measure how well they're doing in, you know, and my wife laughs at me because I think I said arithmetic last time, but I want those measurable results for my children because when I send my kids here, I want to know that they're going to be able to function in the real world. And unfortunately, when you get into the real world, it's not like a school environment. We need to prepare them to face some of those challenges. We do create a safe space for them, but the way that we ensure success is that we focus on their education and we don't spend 30, 40 minutes talking about putting the equity into a policy. Does it matter if it's on the top line of something? What political points are we trying to make here? Our goal is to educate our children. And I ask that you refocus your efforts on that. And the other part is to readdress the equity policy. We've had, like I said, 2 months since we all brought it up. We have concerns as a community. You represent us. We elected you into these positions. And if you don't continue to represent us appropriately, we're going to vote you out. Please do the right thing.
That's the end of public comment, Ms. Prophet.
All right, we're going to move on to item 15, which is board discussion and follow-up. Do we have any follow-up?
The date of the LMP meeting is September 27th, and that time is, and I surely hope we see the hundreds of people on that meeting that we see at some of the board meetings that we have, because that's where we have to start this process of figuring this stuff out.
Yep.
Yeah, I would like to just bring up some board discussion. I think one of the things that we've done in the past, and certainly pre-COVID, we used to talk into the community directly at board meetings, well, more in the workshops, not so much the board meetings, because these are voting meetings. These aren't the working sessions that we typically had talked to and we could talk to the community. But when there's obvious misinformation or uninformed folks up here, and we do have the correct information, we might want to reconsider just addressing it here and there, right? I mean, because multiple people come up here and make misstatements, just misstatement of fact. And it's just, you know, something that we can correct. We're say, hey, listen, you know, by the way, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people at 17 different equity meetings over the course of a year that were out in the public and did understand what it was. And so, you know, to sit here and say, oh, we didn't do this or we didn't look at that, you know, it's just a misstatement of fact. Heather, you have your time. Listen, we can communicate and talk, and we're happy to do that. And you're one of the people that misstate stuff. You sit here and call Robert's rules and you say, oh, it's this and that. And it's completely misstated. It's perfectly within Robert's rules. That's just how these things are done. That's how a motion and an amendment to a motion happens. It's in the rule. To sit here and say that we're not following our Sunshine Act or any of that, that's nonsense. So I think maybe, you know, as we're, and I encourage everyone to get educated on what actually did go into the work here and the time that was put into and the amount of community input and the hundreds of people who did come to meetings, many of them. So yes, there's a disagreement in the community to have different opinions. And then we hear equity of outcome. That's nothing in anything we've done as a board, as a discussion point. It's not in the concept of equity. It's not in the definition of it. It only exists in cable news. There is no such thing as an equity of outcome. There's no intention of equity of outcome in this school district or anywhere, that we've been discussing this. All we're saying is like, give each kid an opportunity to meet their ability. Yeah, but we're trying to have a discussion as a board. And I think we should answer these things.
All right, so my next question is, we've had some comments from the public, some emails about gym and recess. So just want to make sure the communication is clear on what the masking policy looks like for that, so we can make sure that, kids are able to remove their masks when appropriate.
Sure. The order that was referenced, there is mentioning of physical education and when you can take the mask off, and that is when we're in a well-ventilated area. We have come to the conclusion that all of our gyms in the Owen J. Roberts School District are well-ventilated. So that's not the issue. The issue is you have to also maintain 6 feet physical distancing to take off those masks. So I know Dr. Marchini and I've had conversations. We've talked with principals. We're going to broach that topic again with our principals this week at our meeting. We're going to try, when possible, to encourage our phys ed teachers to do activities when they're indoors that can keep kids 6 feet apart. If they can do that, then they can take their masks off. If they can't keep them 6 feet apart, then they can't. Obviously, weather like today or tomorrow, what we're scheduled for, kids are outside, and that's where we want them being. That's where we're trying to schedule all of our classes, but when we have bad weather days. And I would say also a difference between last year and this year is we're having all of our kids in person. Last year, we didn't have all of our kids in person at the same time. So we have more kids to contend with in our classrooms and in our physical education classes. But we will ask our teachers, and we have already, to make a concerted effort to try and have activities where kids are 6 feet apart so that they don't have to wear masks when they're indoors.
Okay, so when we play sports indoors, it's just not covered.
Correct, yeah, sports indoors, there's no masking requirement while you're engaging in that physical activity, correct.
Right, so I always question that, like, we play basketball indoors with no mask, but kids can't play dodgeball indoors. Yeah.
Why is a bus different than a classroom? But I'm not the guy that writes that stuff.
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, we play sports inside. Obviously, when you play basketball, you're less than 6 feet, right? In some cases, but okay. My concern is when kids go in quarantine, I really think that we need to make a better effort to educate those kids, as they could fall into quarantine multiple times throughout the year, right? Today, they're asynchronous, I believe. When they go in quarantine, do they get work?
They do. We talked about that at the working session. Dr. Soder did a report, but yes, when kids are quarantined, they are given work. At this point, we do not have that many kids that are quarantined, so our teachers are conversing with those kids and meeting their needs while they're quarantined. I know a lot of conversation is around the cameras, and when we turn the cameras on, we feel that at this point that our teachers are able to meet the needs. But if we get to the point where we have a large number of students quarantined, where our teachers can't meet their needs individually, we can consider using the cameras.
Okay, that's the next level above asynchronous?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would say I'm thankful that this far into the school year, there were only 17 positive cases. Given what's going on around the country, I'm grateful that, whatever the reason, that the numbers have been fairly low and manageable. And I hope all those kids are recovered.
And I believe our community spread went back down from substantial to high in the most recent week's data for Chester County.
Yeah,
So I think that's something to be very thankful for.
Yeah, we were high and then we went to substantial, but at the end of last week in the county, it went back up to high again, which is the highest level.
Oh, I thought that substantial was higher than high at this point in time.
No,
Yeah, it's just the opposite.
substantial and then high is the is the
So
highest
it came
level.
down to substantial and then went back up to high?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other board discussion or follow-up?
So completely off topic of anything crazy. Pre-COVID, we were talking about having kids that had like activities and some of the like student government or the environmental group present to us and come in and tell us about some of their stuff that we can do. And I want to figure out a way that we can start having some of these groups that do work around the school or do things come in and maybe give the students an opportunity to share with the board a little bit with what they're doing here and there. So, could we invite the environmental group in or this group in here to maybe do that and trying to work in a little bit more of student integration into some of what we see from the board.
Like in the working
directly from the
sessions?
student. Yeah, at the working
Yeah.
sessions. And, I'm not sure how to do that or how to invite or what to do that, but maybe some thought to that and we could make it more of get a little bit of.
We have done that in the past, Paul.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
COVID just really kind of blew it all apart, but even when
Yeah,
Cliff
COVID's
was on
overwhelmed us a
board
little
previously,
bit,
we
so.
had several groups come in and present, and it's always very, I don't want to say entertaining, but educational and a delight to see these students who get to do some of these things. So I'm sure the future board, and hopefully as life moves forward again, be able to do that, because that's what we enjoy seeing as a board, the results of our efforts. And I do just want to say to the administration last year and this year, and all of the complaints we get, I think we did a very good job in educating our students through this pandemic. It was not easy for any of us. Many of us had sleepless nights, but we worked very hard at it. Administration worked very hard at it, and I think we managed to pull it off as best as we possibly could. So as I will soon be leaving the board, I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Mrs. Booth. Any other comments before I go off topic? Okay, I do have a question because we wanted to circle back on this. So working sessions, I know for the past year, we had Dr. Lloyd weigh in on what they looked like, and I think it's important to have Dr. Stout weigh in on what he would like to see, in person, Zoom. What are your recommendations? Because I know that there was concern about staff being all in one room, but I think you have a different thought process, so.
Yeah, as we progress here, I think it's important for us to try and, model what we expect. I mean, I love the fact that we're able to meet here in person. If I could throw a little humor in, maybe sometimes not during public comment. But no, it's important for us to be here, obviously. So as we move forward, when possible, we would like to be here in person. We do realize at times, that there are, board members that have commitments that they can't be here. And so we want to be able to keep that Zoom stream going, at least for now. Ultimately, though, I would like to move into full in-person meetings for not only our regular board meetings, but our committee meetings as well. I still think with the high level of COVID, we may not be there quite yet. I know, I believe, I'm not sure, Mrs. Munson, on this or not, but that Legislative and Policy Committee that we're talking about, I believe that may be virtual. Am I correct? Are we doing that through Zoom?
Yes, we did announce that as a Zoom meeting.
Okay, so that's going to be Zoom, so I know
Although
that.
on this, I'm sorry, I'm trying to see what it says exactly on the printed version. It says virtual meeting via Zoom, yes.
Correct, so I know that is going to be Zoom this month, that meeting, but I know our work session last week was in person. So as we move forward, as much as possible, we would like to have them in person.
So how does the rest of the board? We're okay with that? What thoughts?
I'm fine with either. Virtual, I'll be on with Par. So.
I think the Zoom option, though, definitely opens it up if a board member is not able to attend in person.
But we're having both, right?
We're going to continue with both, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I saw that little option on the, if you're going to come, which one are you going to come as, in person or an option on the meeting invite? So I thought that was a great idea.
If you come on Zoom, though, you miss the pizza in the box.
Yeah,
So,
the pizza in the
I
box.
understand.
Unfortunately, you get it sent to us at home.
Are we good? Move forward? Okay. No more follow-up? Good? Okay. All right. Item 16, board requests for information. Any requests for information? No? Okay. All right. Item 17 is adjournment. This meeting, bring this meeting to an end. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.